You just tell me if you need anything else, deputy.
Miss Ellie said as she topped up my coffee cup. I'd been out of the hospital a week. It was my first night back on shift. Miss Ellie, I said, you again got to fret over me. I'm good. I'm fixed up. She looked down at me for a moment, her feline features crinkled slightly, as if she was appraising me. Her eyes took on a vaguely disappointed feature.
Deputy, I had a boy like you once,
she said after a long moment. I noticed that her fingers were twitching slightly, as if she was imagining a cigarette between them.
He would get banged up on some fool's errand or another, and every damn time, he would run off on another damn fool's errand before he was ready to go again. Never took the time to heal up properly. In 1937, some damn fool Thor-worshipping cultist emptied a submachine gun into his chest down in Mexico. He didn't get the chance to heal up after that.
Miss Ellie reached down and put two clawed fingers on the edge of the half-eaten plate of steak and eggs on the table in front of me, and pushed it away from me, and she slid it right back.
Now your appetite isn't all the way back yet. Normally you'd be asking for another plate by this point. That tells me you aren't done healing. So finish your food, or so help me you aren't going to be given the chance to heal up either.
I stared up at her for a minute. She stared right back at me. Her eyes had an air of matronly threat to them. Just big yellow cat eyes glaring down at me. I could tell her I had a full clean bill of health from the hospital, that I had eaten a big lunch, that I was fine, that my authority as a sheriff's deputy superseded hers as a waitress, that I was a paying customer, that what I ate was none of her damn business. But what I actually said was, "Yes, Miss Ellie," whilst picking up my fork. I stabbed up a fork full of eggs and a dead cow and shoveled them into my mouth. Ellie fixed me with a toothy approval smile and turned away from my table. I swore she was purring when she walked away to check on the other customers. It didn't matter if I was good or not. Ellie was going to be Ellie, and all I could do was what I was told. Besides, it ain't a bad thing, having someone give a shit about you. I ate my dinner in silence. I had a lot to think about during the downtime. Why did the shitbirds attack? Who sent them? Why did they send them? Who was the dipshit watching the fight from the porch? Was he the master? Was he a necromancer, like Dollywall had floated as the Miller's executioner? Near as anyone could figure it, the Millers might have tried to do a deal with something or someone, which went wrong real fast, or it might have been laid by someone looking to take something from them. From the little I know of death magic, not to mention any other kind of dark stuff, a witch's blood could turbocharge the fuck out of that shit. Don't ask me for specifics, because I don't have the first fucking clue why. But you drop that stuff in your ritual, and boom. If you know what you're doing, you just put some serious ass behind your mojo. That on its own might be the killer's motive. The Millers had friends and associates, of course, but nobody we interviewed could tell us a thing. They most likely wouldn't have told us anything if they knew. Wizards love their fucking secrets. I mean, it's understandable, especially from human wizards. This touches on that dangerous knowledge thing I was talking about earlier. No need to go advertising that you actually know the boogeyman's real name. He might get pissed that you do. That sort of knowledge might get your intestines wrapped around a telephone pole. It's Jeff, by the way. Don't tell anybody, that's dangerous information. Of course, all of this was beyond me. I wasn't going to be involved with the investigation. That's more of a homicide detective thing. Rolling up drunks and writing speeding tickets is more my thing. And besides, there's a pretty good chance we'll never figure out what happened that night. You know, that something like 95% of murders go unsolved. Just the way things shake out. That shit's no different in Bull's Heart. Hell, it's probably worse. You find some drifter crucified to a billboard 100 feet up in the air with his liver gnawed on, you'd think everyone around here would drop everything and try to figure that one out. Here in Bull's Heart, we just send up a couple of stripers with some fabuloso and have them clean that shit up. If it never happens again, we consider that job jobbed. I mean, you would be surprised how little evidence any centuries-old murder machine can leave behind. Now, if we catch them in the act, we try and put a stop to that shit, don't get me wrong. But we can only do so much. I will say, though, sometimes we catch a sloppy one and ride their asses into the ground. So aside from a few nightmares and a tingle up my spine whenever I hear a blackbird calling in the dead of night, I figured my part in this was done for. I dropped my fork on my plate, my clean plate I might add. I was about to motion to the striper busting the tables that I needed my bill when the door swung open. Deputy Dollywall slunk in all his tiger-striped glory. He smiled when he saw me. I noticed he didn't show any teeth when he did. I briefly wondered if that was because he didn't want to appear threatening. Which, I mean, good fucking luck. His eyes held genuine joy, though. Seemed he was really happy to see me still on the side of the long walk. "Come," he exuberated at me. "I am happy to see you're back on duty. I was worried for you. I came to visit, but you were sedated. I'm so sorry I couldn't see you whilst you were conscious. I did try, though." He was starting to babble in that way that the English do when they're uncomfortable. "Man, don't sweat that shit," I said, smiling up at him. "I'm just happy to see that you came out of that fur bowl, no pun intended, on your feet." I motioned for him to pull up a chair, and he nodded his head graciously for taking the empty seat across from me. He spared a gaze over at Ellie across the room. She was dealing with a dissatisfied customer, an irate meat golem named Sheldon. Sheldon, to put it mildly, was a bit of a fucking Karen. Cunt might have been an appropriate term as well, but I'm not Australian. I had reason to deal with the guy on occasion. The sort of dude that calls the cops on kids playing too loudly in the park. Just a grumpy old fuck. Sheldon was mad about some such nonsense that probably didn't matter. Can't remember what it was that had him so peeved, and I don't really give a shit. "Think you might have an opportunity to score some boyfriend points there," I told the burly Rakshashan deputy. I had a notion that he might have a thing for Miss Ellie. My take of him was that he was a stand-up fella, so I didn't have a problem encouraging him to pursue that. "You think so?" he asked absent-mindedly, running his hand down his beard. "I reckon so," I responded. "Don't hand back on my account." He stood up from his chair. He took a moment to look down at his uniform, making sure it looked good. He squared up his shoulders and set his sights on Ellie, and the bickering meat golem too. "Right," he said, like billions of determined Englishmen said before him, right before getting down to business. He was interrupted by a minotaur crashing through the window. Well, not just a minotaur. About 4 people, humans by the look of them, were hanging off of him. I recognized the minotaur. He was my good friend Bubba Ray. I was on my feet in an instant, wondering what kind of stomp-knocking jackasses would try to pick on a guy like Bubba. Dude being built like a Greek shithouse aside, he was a total sweetheart. "I'll end your fucking bloodline, demon!" Bubba Ray bellowed as he wrapped his massive hands around the ribs of one of his attackers and slammed the man face first into one of his horns. The horn in question driving into the man's face till the gore-slicked point protruded from the back of his head. The attacker went limp and ragdolled as Bubba swung his head around, before the body tore free from the head and went flying across the small diner. That was the sort of shit you saw on death metal album covers from the 80s. But it gave his attackers no moment of pause. They pressed into him, hands tearing at his hide, ripping bloody strips of flesh from the minotaur. And no, that shouldn't have been possible. Normal folks can't go tearing into minotaurs. That's just not how that shit works. The Glock 40 MOS on my hip cleared leather, and I was in a shooting stance, ready to start splitting coconuts. "Everybody get in the fucking ground!" I yelled out of habit. Doubt Bubba Ray or his dance partners even heard me, though. Not over the noise of the fracas, smashing glass and splintering furniture. But outside of that, I was a bit stymied on options. I don't know if you've ever seen a Minotaur fight 3 people tearing chunks out of his ass, but there are a lot of moving parts and damn near any of them could flatten you. Not to mention we're in a crowded building, in which the 10mm 220 grain flat nose hunting rounds sitting in my Glock had the ability to murder about 55% of the patrons in the background, and the other 45% would be highly annoyed with me shooting them. Catch a hoof in the nuts, or accidentally shoot someone trying to enjoy their omelet. Bad choices all around. Side note, if you visit Bull's Heart, you have to have one of the Earl's omelets. Shit's amazing. I wouldn't think too deep on what's in them, though. There is literally no telling. Bubba grabbed one of the 6 hands, ripping him apart, and jerked the hand so hard that he snapped the attacking man's arm clean off at the elbow. He then reared back and swung the man's own arm at him like a billy club. I'm not gonna lie, that was one of the most hardcore things I ever seen in my life. I looked back over at Dollywall, who had that big, dumb, double-barrel 1911 of his drawn out on the fight. He caught my eye and he nodded at me. I nodded back and I drew my asp. With a flick of my wrist, I had 26 inches of titanium bitch be good at my disposal. We advanced on the fight, shouting commands to turn off the shenanigans. Bubba Ray glanced our way and bellowed, "Fellas, I'm trying to stop fighting!" He drawled over at us, pain bleeding out of his words. "These sons of bitches won't let me!" I brought my stick down on the shoulder of one of Bubba's attackers. Felt something break in his collarbone, but that didn't seem to bother him none. He went stiff, like he just realized that Bubba Ray wasn't the only person in the universe. He slowly turned to meet me head on. His gaze met mine beneath the shaggy mop of brown hair on his head. "Oh, shit," I grunted. The man's eyes were those of a corpse. No light lit up the windows to his soul. I took a step back. The corpse looked like it had once been a man, roughly mid to late 20s, drifter by the look of him. But that had been some time ago. Gore and grime covered his face. Grass and mud matted his hair to his head. His sunken cheeks were red with Bubba Ray's blood. Fucking zombies. The dead man's lips started to move, as if he was trying to remember how to speak. After a moment, air started to wheeze past those split and cracked pale lips. It wasn't long before those wheezes started to sound like words. "Oh, don't you fucking say it," I nearly growled. "Comes." "Oh, you fucking said it," I said in a suddenly foul mood. I brought the tip of my baton down in an overhand swing, smacking right into the temple of the dead man. I felt bone break, reverberating up the titanium baton, as the dead man made like a tree and fell the fuck over. "Dollywall, they're fucking dead," I hollered out. "This one just told me that his master was coming too." "I heard," Dollywall said, a sigh flavoring his words. "I knew it was a bloody necromancer." "Gonna be a long-ass night," I said, bringing the axe down again on the fallen zombie's head. It seemed like the first strike had done the job, but a double tap is never not a good idea. "Quiet," he said, reaching for his radio. Bubba Ray finished off the last zombie by grabbing its head and squeezing until it cracked open. Black, decayed brain matter hitting the floor with a wet slop sound. Bubba threw the corpse down, where it landed on the tile in a heap of dead flesh. "Jen," Dollywall said into his radio. "Romeo Sierra. Priority."
Romeo Sierra, go ahead.
Jen's voice crackled out of his and my radios. 1037 et al.'s. Do be a dear and send the EMS as well. Subject is a male Minotaur, approximately 2600 years of age. Severe trauma caused by what appear to be zombies. No earthly idea of what kind. 4 down. Unknown if any more remain in the vicinity.
Roger that, Romeo Sierra. I'll get an EMS routed to you. Any call signs in the area, please move to Earl's.
Romeo Sierra is site commander until properly relieved. Please update as the situation develops.
Jim was routing all available backup to us, as zombies tend to be a bit concerned to those of us trying to keep a lid on things. Bastards were a walking virus, and unless you cut them all out, they could pop up down the line and fuck up your whole day. Jen had designated Deputy Dollywall as the site commander. Not out of any deference, but simply because he was the guy on the scene with the radio and a clearly cool head. As soon as someone who had better training on the issue or more experience with the subject matter arrived, they would take over. Roger that, Jen. Romeo copies all. Ella ran out of the kitchen holding dish towels. Her face looked slightly frantic as she ran straight for Bubba Ray, who was now sitting at the table. He was bleeding profusely from where the zombies had torn into him. Ella popped one of her claws and ran it down the back of Bubba's Texan jersey, slitting it open to show off the bloody wounds on Bubba's body. "Miss Ellie," Bubba said with a bit of pain in his voice. "Why are you trying to get me naked? I'm a married man."
Oh, hush up, Bubba Ray Minos. I used to change your damn diapers.
Ellie said, brushing the attempted humor aside as she went to work on him. I grabbed a towel from Ellie and pressed it into the partially nasty gash on Bubba's enormous bicep. He looked rough. The zombies had chewed him up something good. I didn't think that a Minotaur could catch zombism from a human undead, but he could still bleed to death. At least I think he could. "You're gonna be alright, old man," I said. "Queenie," Bubba's wife, "would kick your ass if you died before EMS got here. You know that, right?" "Yeah," Bubba Ray said with a chuckle. "I reckon she would. Especially if we're dead humans that lay me down." I looked around at everyone else in the diner. People were starting to clear out, but there were still a few looky-loos staying planted in their chairs, enjoying the free show. Earl Snout was peeking out of the kitchen window. His crocodilian eyes held as much concern as the former reptilian god of war's eyes could hold, but it was there if you knew where to look. He hissed at his latest striper to get his attention. "Grab a towel." His drowned man's voice warbled at the confused young dirtball. "And make yourself useful for once, Ezekiel. We have a customer in need, and the dining room looks shoddy." This striper had a bit of a stronger instinct for self-preservation than Marcel had. He got his ass in gear pretty quick. He almost moved over to Miss Ellie to help out, but then realized his walking nightmare had become a zombie movie, and the biggest guy in the room had just had his ass torn up by zombies. So he made for the broom closet. Probably safer to sweep up glass, rather than get close to a giant ball man. My eyes fell to his patch. Torture killer. Might have been why he wasn't flipping the hell out. He was used to the blood and guts. "Calm," Dollywall said. "Can you grab the trauma kit from your vehicle, please?" "On it," I said, moving towards the door, keeping an eye on the twice dead men splayed out on the floor. Goes without saying I wasn't even going to try to resuscitate one of them, but I was damn going to keep an eye on them, of course. You never know what kind of zombies you're getting. At first, I paused dead in my tracks in the doorway. "Oh, fiddle shits," I whispered when I looked out into the night. I leaned back into the diner, my pistol clearing leather again. "Hey, Dollywall, we got a fucking problem out here. Looks like somebody just emptied a fucking graveyard on our doorstep. Bodies. A lot of them were stumbling our way through the parking lot. They all had that unblinking silent stare that the recently risen dead had. And all of those stares seemed to be aimed my way. It was odd. A few other times I'd dealt with dead things, they had had the decency to make some sort of noise to let you know they're coming. These assholes were completely silent, though. Quiet as the grave. Just dead flesh slivering its way through the moonlight. "Well," I said as I raised my pistol, "that's okay. I'll make enough noise for all of us." The zombies just stared at me. "Sorry." That sounded better in my head. I opened fire.